I have never seen a company fumble good PR as quickly and proficiently as Xbox. It's genuinely impressive how they can have one good moment and then just completely drop the ball. Prices are going up. In the era of the $80 game, we are truly about to be in it. Hello everyone, I am Jmulls, and Xbox announced that they are adjusting the prices of most of what they do, essentially, when it comes to gaming. The consoles themselves and various accessories like controllers, the Elite controller, at least specifically on their website, the Series 2, and also the Xbox stereo headset and wireless headset. Prices are pretty much going up across the board, and they also announced that games themselves, well, I'll just quote them. Some of our new first-party games will launch at $79.99 beginning this holiday season. Xbox is essentially following in the footprints left behind just recently by Nintendo. Okay, so let's get into it and talk about why this is happening, is it here to stay, and just where do we go from here? Well, I think the obvious answer a lot of people are going to give for the reason Xbox is doing this is that these price hikes are a result of the tariffs going on right now that have been making all the headlines, right? I'm sure you've heard about it. And honestly, I don't want to dwell on the tariffs that much right now because I think they're just being used mostly as an excuse. I think Xbox, and don't get me wrong here, I think Sony will follow suit just down the line. I just think these companies are trying to use the current political environment as like a masquerade to cover up the fact they wanted to do this all along. Because on the surface, it makes more sense. If it's more pricey to actually make and ship these things, then obviously you would have to raise the price to keep your margins. That just makes business sense, right? However, there's a few details here that don't particularly line up. And when it comes to stuff like this, I'm a firm believer that the devil is in the details. Remember the line we just quoted. Some of our new first-party games will launch at $79.99 beginning this holiday season. So if you were raising the prices of these games because of the current political climate of the world right now, why would you put it off? If this was truly a necessity, why wouldn't you have this act retroactively to all existing first-party Xbox titles? You see, they never specifically actually call out the tariffs here. They say that we understand that these changes are challenging and they were made with careful consideration given market conditions and the rising cost of development. Looking ahead, we continue to focus on offering more ways to play more games across any screen and ensuring value for Xbox players. They don't actually say tariff here. And by the fact that they're putting off actually raising the price of games to $80, or $79.99, because the 1 cent really matters. Since they're putting that off until the holiday season, which is not for months because it's May, that tells me that when it comes to games, it's not a pressing concern. At least what's going on right now. On top of that, the other thing that, raises a red flag for me is if you scroll down to the little blurb that says, which games are increasing in price? Fair question. We will adjust the pricing of some of our new first-party games starting this holiday season to $79.99 US. This update will apply to physical and digital versions. That said, different games and expansions will continue to be offered at a variety of price points. Did you catch it? Digital. Something that, to my knowledge, wouldn't be affected by the tariffs to begin with, because they're not a physical good. It's a download that you buy online. To me, all of this is merely a cover. They saw Nintendo raise the price of seemingly everything across the board, and they want in on that action because they believe at the end of the day people will still pay for this stuff, so it's just more money for them. Let Nintendo take the brunt of the PR disaster that it was. It's Nintendo, so they'll be able to get out the other end just fine. And then Xbox can come in, drop this bombshell, and not be the first one in the door. Because the first one in the door, the first one that tries to quote-unquote pioneer these kinds of practices when it comes to raising prices of gaming across the board, they're the ones that generally get a lot of the flack. But by the time other companies start to join in the process, the conversation is viewed to be tired and boring and people just move on. Because at the end of the day, we all know in the back of our heads, it's inevitable. It's going to happen. Look, I get it. It's a giant corporation. They're going to giant corporation, right? They're going to look out for what makes them more money. And if they believe that they can just raise prices across the board and not lose any sales or minimal at that, they would just make more money. So of course they would do that. That just makes sense. What I take issue with is when people argue against their own best interest and make these corporate arguments to try and justify mindless consumption. These details signal to me that the ultimate goal, whether or not the tariffs were ever a thing, were to raise these prices across the board anyways, primarily the ones for games. They're just using everything that's going on right now as a cover to justify their actions and hope the internet just gets bored with the conversation, which allows them to normalize and further normalize increasing the pricing of gaming across the board, even though there's no additional value proposition to the consumer. And don't get me wrong here, I'm firmly of the opinion that PlayStation and Sony are going to follow suit. It's just a matter of time, whether or not they want to wait for the next generation or they'll just try and pop in on this trend in a month or two. We don't know, we have to wait, but it feels like an inevitability. But when it comes to the actual hardware and peripherals, yeah, the price increase right now is understandable, right? If stuff just costs more to make and ship, then of course you would have to increase the price. That makes sense. You're not going to hear much argument from me. The only point I would raise is, theoretically, right, if the tariffs went away, say in a week, not gonna actually happen, just let's do this logical experiment. If the tariffs went away in a week, does anyone really expect them to lower the prices again? Maybe not a week, maybe in say 6 months. When this has been normalized for a few months and has been going on for a while, do we really expect Xbox to go back? To revert these price hikes? Maybe they would. I'm just asking the question. Do you really think they would though? And if they don't, was it ever about the tariffs to begin with? And I mean truly about them. But what about inflation? It's a decent argument because on the surface, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. If the value of something changes over time, then of course you would need to adjust your prices. And that makes a lot of sense, right? However, just like when we talked about this particular topic when it came to Nintendo doing this, it's a surface level argument at best in my opinion that only really makes sense if you don't truly understand what's going on with the industry, and I can't blame anyone for not, because who wants to do that crap? And people love to point out the price of certain games back in the days of the NES or the SNES and stuff like that, and they just like to also ignore the generations after that primarily, especially when PlayStation came onto the scene. Because yes, the price of certain games, you can look up the price of Chrono Trigger back in the day, were very varied, and the value of the dollar was way different back then than it is now. However, we're not in that time period anymore, and the inflation argument only works if the market itself has not grown over the last couple of decades, but it just simply has. Gaming is bigger than it ever was before, outside of maybe 2020 when everyone was locked inside, or 2021. So you have more people than ever before, for the most part, buying games. These companies, this argument worked a little bit less for Nintendo, but it doesn't here. A lot of these games in the modern day sell themselves with multiple different editions already. Day 1 DLC, battle passes, online stores. It's not as if these companies have not found ways to make even more money. Does anyone really truly expect Microsoft to be strapped for cash on Nintendo? I mean, come on, you're kidding yourself at that point. But these companies are using these arguments because they make sense on a surface level. Where I push back is don't try and blame the rising cost of game development entirely on the consumer, when a non-insignificant chunk of that is just based on poor managerial skills and overinflated budgets. It's simple corporate greed at the end of the day, and they're just really good at timing, or making use of the situations they find themselves in to come out ahead and make even more money. Will the price of existing games change? No, this will affect some new first-party games starting this holiday season. If it was a necessity because of inflation or because of the tariffs, why doesn't this apply retroactively to these games? It applies to the hardware, but why not retroactively to these older games? Surely at least the physical ones would still be affected by things like the tariffs or modern day inflation, so why not them? Or do you think the PR would just be too bad or no one would buy them? Because they saw these games at price points that were lower before you raised them. Do you think you can only get away with it for new games? But if that's the belief, then it's not really a necessity now, is it? Because if it was a necessity, you would have done it anyways. This is why I don't buy things like the inflation argument or like the tariff argument entirely. For certain things, absolutely, I can kind of understand it, right? But when it comes to the price of games, they're just trying to slip that in and hope they can get away with it, and they probably can. At least Nintendo can, because they put out great games consistently, and Xbox is sporadic at best. They had one good week, and then they announced all of this, where they put out Oblivion Remastered, and they had Clair Obscur Expedition 33 on Game Pass day one. Both games are just $50, by the way, and are absolutely massive. Yeah, Oblivion Remaster is a remaster, but there was still a lot of work that went into that game. That game still has a lot of things in it, a lot of things to do. $50. Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I'm not even like that far in, and it's one of the best games I've ever had the pleasure of playing. It's absolutely gorgeous with amazing music and visuals. The gameplay is on point as well with an amazing story. Has a great world to explore. $50. Baldur's Gate 3, one of the densest, biggest games ever conceived. $60. Came out only a few years ago. Oh sure, Elden Ring has a version that is $80, but that's the base game with Shadow of the Erdtree, a massive expansion. When these games came out, this is something that I talked about a lot back in those days. These games are important, not just because these games are amazing by themselves, they are. Elden Ring and Baldur's Gate 3 are two of my favorite games of all time. But they showcase that a lot of these, arguments that people make to explain away the rising cost of gaming, the increased monetization for a lot of modern gaming, those arguments just don't hold that much water, because it's not a rule if exceptions exist. These companies can do it, why can't you? I don't think it's an inability to do so, I just think they know they're big enough to get away with it. Well, where do we go from here? Well, I think it's only a matter of time before Sony follows suit and does these price increases as well. We are soon to fully enter the era of the $80 game, and I think what's going to happen is that there will be some games that are able to sell themselves at $80 because people perceive the value to still be there, especially if it's for their favorite game series. This will start to price some people out of gaming on the whole, at least when it comes to the big new AAA games, right? And I will always argue that in the modern day, wait for sales, especially if you have access to platforms that give you frequent sales, like if you're on PC, just wait, because a lot of the time, these games will go on sale not too long after they come out. They ride the initial hype wave to sell at full price, and then later down the line are able to go at a lower price point to get the people they didn't manage to capture the first go around. I think there will be a lot of other games that try to increase their price and go to $80, just like when the big new thing was $70 games, but they're not going to have the sway or the swagger of some of these games and some of these IP, and they're going to see significantly smaller and fewer sales than they would if they were priced accordingly. Because especially if I have $80, right? I could buy either one new game, or I could wait for a Steam sale and buy a whole host of other games. Like, so many, dude. Like, we're not even in the middle of a big Steam sale right now or anything. Persona 5 Royal is 60% off for only $23.99. Persona 3 Reload is 50% off for $34.99. That's not even $60, and you can easily get over 200 hours of quality entertainment from two of the best RPGs ever made. That's over $20 less than what these companies are asking for their big shiny new first-party titles. The arguments for $80 games and the price of gaming going up only make sense in a bubble. We're not the corporations. We're not the companies. As consumers, it's our goal to get the best value, to get what we want at the best price point that we can get it. Middle-earth, the Shadow Bundle, 90% off for only $6.99 for all of that. The entire Dark Souls franchise is on sale right now. Dark Souls Remastered, 50% off, $19.99. Dark Souls 2, Skull of the First Sin, 50% off, $19.99. Dark Souls 3, 50% off, $29.99. Sure, they're older games, but if you haven't played them, then it's still a new game for you. This is what I'm talking about. Be smart about it. Go shopping. Look at the value that is out there for you right now. You want a new game? Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion Remastered, $49.99. I've been playing a little bit of that game. It's insanely good. It's great. Clair Obscur Expedition 33, $49.99. What is shaping up to be one of the best RPGs I've ever had the pleasure of playing. I think at the end of the day, there will be some people that just don't buy $80 games overall, for whatever reason. That is their decision, they have that right. And there will be other people, for certain games, will want to play that game no matter what, and will buy it at $80 or $90 or $100 if they see the value is there. And you know what? I'm not entirely against that idea, but just make sure the value is there. If a game comes out without a online store without a season pass or without a battle pass and all these other ways that a lot of modern games try and screw over your wallet, and it's just a really good-ass game, then yeah, I can see the argument where it's like, dude, it was really pricey to make this game, inflation's a jabroni, we kinda just need to up the price here. And if the value is there, okay, I can understand it. My issue is when the value is supposedly not there, or you try to act as if it's a necessity when it isn't. I think with that, I'll call the video there for the day. Thank you all for tuning in. My pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and help support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again.